shalom to each and everybody that might come along here and take a look. We're living in such an amazing time, and so many things going on. It's just absolutely mind-boggling, the amount of truth that is available. Uh, and if you're one of those who are on the active search for truth, then there's certainly plenty to find. Many things that have to be discerned, but certainly amazing nonetheless. So we'll come together and we say to you guys today, and I hope you'll say back to us, Namaste. We're in the book Isis Unveiled, and I will have to say that that it's so difficult where we're at because we're so oblivious to so much of reality. I find that it's very easy for people, and I think they did that on purpose. The whole concept of Christianity and programming people to not, if you would, not know what the truth is actually almost something that the mass majority of people really want. They don't really want to do the work that's necessary to learn truth, and truth is never free and it's never easy. And so we live in a time where there are those that are promising people an easy way. If you'll just do this one thing, you can manifest all of your dreams, and then of course thousands of people watch it and it never works for them. The ancient road is in many ways there is a separation, but you have to be able to see it. The ancient road from what is maybe being taught, maybe at some level it fits or it's efficient, or but oftentimes it is presented or sold to people as something that is easy, and not that this is hard, but it does require everything of you. And so, Yeshua gave us the picture, he gave us the parameter, and that parameter is that you must actively seek. We find in another place where the scripture says that you must busy yourself with learning that you might not be ashamed. And in the time, it seems like half the people understand that there is lots of chaos and tumult that spiritual people have to deal with, and the other half just want somebody to tell them a redux of Christianity, which is they're saved and it's all okay. And the truth is that there's a little truth of both of those, and neither one are the truth. And so it's really a massive journey. This book that we read, I realize fully this book is above the mass majority of people who will come. They have no clue, no idea about what really is going on here. And, some might question, well, why would I go backwards and so far? And the reality, and Helena will clarify 1,000 times for you that this really isn't going backwards. It's really going forward. But there has been so much backwardness to humanity. So I said this last night, and I'm going to say it, and maybe some of you, it will catch your attention. But there are many, many, many supposedly spiritual people out there that are telling you that you're a human having a spiritual encounter. And I would like to give you a little bit of truth that if you are truly a truth seeker will help you a little bit. And that is absolutely not the truth. If your humanity is the priority of what you are, then you probably will never understand where we're headed. You are not a human. End of it. You are a spirit being that is eternal, that has lived from everlasting to everlasting, is how the Bible says it. You have inhabited many cars across the time of your year, many vehicles with which to carry yourself. And one of the things that I'm watching from people, and most of the time, most don't even know that they're actually expressing it very clearly for those who can see, that they, in fact, are functioning under the lie that has been sold to all humanity. It is a part of the trick that was used to cause us to forget the truth, and they used it yet again when they wrote the New Testament to cause you to forget the truth. And so maybe you haven't even come to that understanding, but when you do, if you do, you will be able to look at every society that has existed, certainly in the last 2,000 years, and you will recognize that all of them have been playing this game. The Islamic people do the same thing. The Christian people have certainly done that, and really any other religious sect or belief system there is, maybe short of who were the true Christians, which were the Gnostics. And so just so you know, we're on the right path, but the path is very, very, very huge. And I don't mean that in that it is wide and broad. I mean it's as narrow as a foot width and 10,000 miles tall. And so it's certainly an amazing journey, but what all is coming and what all is already going on, for those of you who haven't spent any time researching, there's a massive thing going on in the spirit world, whether y'all know it or not. It's happening all around you every day. And it is going to cause there seems to be people are hung up on this thing that there's nothing bad going to happen. And yet, unfortunately, there's way too many people that are telling the truth that there is. It is going to affect humanity on a massive level. And if you go back and you read the prophets of old, I'm talking about the Edgar Cayce's and the Dolores Cannon. If you listen to those people are not in league at all with the new modern teachings that are going on. And in fact, the new modern teachings are typically a morphed version of what they taught. They weren't selling enough conferences, so they needed to change the message, just like Christianity does, to get you to sucker into buying into their nonsense. And so it really gets heavy. So I wanted to say that this book that we're reading through, for many of you, is going to be college level stuff. You know, we were robbed. We know nothing about geometry. The mass majority of people know nothing about geometry. Half of this society dropped out of school and can hardly put 5 numbers together. And we're talking about the universe being built by mathematical equation. And so we really don't yet fully understand the degradation that has gone on in the mind of humans. Now, as time goes on, many of you may come to that understanding, and others may never. But either outcome of that, is what your path and your journey and what you maybe even agreed to. But there is certainly a lot of knowledge coming out about who we are, what we are, and so Helena is the first half of this book that we're going to continue until it just gets to a point where I recognize that nobody's going to be able to get anything out of it, and then I'll discontinue it. There's just too much out there that is more at a base level for people who really don't want to spend any time studying, and in many situations aren't even interested in buying a book to find out what happened to humanity over the last 15,000 years. And so, but it is a college level spiritual book. She was more deep really than almost any spiritual speaker that has in the last 1,000 years. And so don't be surprised if she says words. She's very intelligent, she's very educated, she's very eloquent, and she will talk right over the top of your head and you not have a clue about what she's talking about. And so it's going to be very difficult for some of you maybe to get very much out of this, and others are going to walk away with a gold mine because her revelation and truth is quite amazing. The things that this person, which most people know nothing about, the things that she had manifested. And so I'm going to kind of throw another seed out there for you. We have been taught our whole life that all magic is bad. And some of you right now might be having your religious Christianity pop back up in your mind. And to be quite honest with you, friends, if you read and understand the Bible in the proper context, every one of the spirit people in the Bible, every one of them were doing magic. You have to define that, but I've been saying that to people for a long time, that Moses was a shaman. Well, if you know what a shaman is exactly the same. It's the word used for a witch doctor. He conjured spells, he spoke things, he pulled things out of other dimensions and brought them into their place, all of the stuff, and you were told that it was God, but unfortunately, friends, the God is in you. You are divine. And so that for some of you, you've lived under so much bondage, that may very be difficult for you to even grab that. That all of the lies that you were told about some benevolent God that lives up in some heavenly area is all really, it's a bunch of bunk. None of it's true. There is a universe and there is spirit and power, and those things exist inside of you. And so that's the more I read, the more Yeshua's words begin to take on the life that he was sharing. Understand, he wasn't sharing with you guys. What was written in the Bible was never intended for you, for any of us. It was intended for the people that he was teaching. And so there's many problems and pitfalls along this way. Most of them because we've been robbed of intelligence, we've been robbed of will. That is to say that we almost don't have a will. We want our cell phone so we can sit and make noise. Reading would be a waste of time. And that's where most people live today. And so, the universe gives you what you are inside. If you are lazy and mindless, you are living in a lazy and mindless life. It is a mirror. Whatever you're manifesting is a mirror of what you are inside. As inside, so outside. That Hermetic teaching is one of the most amazing, and yet, depending on the person and where in that space that they exist, it also seems almost at the level of being a damning statement. And I don't want to make any of us feel horrible that our life we created, and I certainly have that is not my intention that I set. It's to expose to you the responsibility that you have to the source and to yourself. It's not about making you feel shameful, although in some cases you should feel shameful. we have totally lost touch with emotions and feelings, and you can't get anything from the universe without feeling. Yeshua taught that. Nothing. That's why most people have never seen a prayer come true in their whole lifetime. And it's because of the feeling. He said some words, and they're exactly what is metaphysically, mystically true. He said mystic truth. Everything he taught was a mystic truth. And so it's not like I'm out there, beating up, being mean to people because they somehow, you certainly, are being destroyed and suffering because of the environment that we live in. Thank goodness that there's spiritual, supernatural things that are going on that really aren't as supernatural as we think they are. They really should be every day for us, and they can be, and for many they will be. I don't say for who and for not who. That's going to be totally up to each individual person. And so I was on page 8 of H.P. Blavatsky. As we get, maybe next week or something, you'll begin to see where the unveiling of Isis is. But having been a Christian where everything outside of Yahweh and the Bible was paganism, this has been a real revelation for me, believe me. Sometimes it takes me a few days after reading 4 or 5 pages. It takes me a few days before I'm ready to read again. It so overwhelms me because all of the things that I believe to be truth are all just a bunch of concocted lies. And we see that all the way through into what's going on in our society. In what society has anybody ever been so low intelligence and frequency-wise that they want outlaws and gangsters and bad people walking around in their city? This is an ultimate low, if you want to know the truth. And yet there's less going on in this time than there ever was in the past. So, page 8, for those that have a book, Isis Unveiled. The first section is we're looking at science. Well, she's bringing a picture for you of how we got here. Why do we need the enlightenment and the changes? There's a cataclysm coming for the earth that everybody, whether enlightened or unenlightened, are going to have to live through. The exposing not of higher consciousness. It's actually the exposing of higher consciousness, that we all are already that, and that's pretty huge. And so she writes, he forgets that geometry, of all of the sciences, this is just the first statement on the page before because it's tied to that page. He forgets that geometry of all the sciences, the only one which proceeds from universal to particulars, was precisely the method employed by Plato in his philosophy. And so I know that many of you may not understand. The only person I know that might even have a concept of this is my grandson. And it's due to someone who was in his life when he was in school who was actually way ahead spiritually than most of the people that I know at some levels, that was talking and teaching my grandchildren about geometry and talking about Euclid and all of the other things that everybody laugh at and go, I don't want to hear none of that crap. Well, you might have wished when things get done manifesting, you might have wished you understood what was going on. And so he forgets that geometry of all sciences, the only one which proceeds from universals to particulars, was precisely the method employed by Plato in his philosophy. As long as exact science confines its observations to physical conditions and proceeds Aristotle-like, it certainly cannot fail. But notwithstanding that the world of matter is baseless for us. See, now science is already turning that it's no longer everything is matter. In fact, you'll hear scientists who years ago would have told you how everything was matter and matter was everything and everything was made of matter. And now, even in mainstream colleges, it's starting to be taught that everything is frequency. Well, the mystics knew that. I've heard Dolores Cannon say 1,000 times already, everything is energy, everything is energy, everything is energy, everything is energy. And when people say that, it's useless words because they don't know what does that encompass. And so that the world of matter is boundless for us. It still is finite. And that thus materialism will turn forever in this vitiated circle, unable to soar higher than the circumference will permit. If you were with me last week, you know, or the last time that we read out of this, that there is an arc that humans will ascend to, and when they hit the apex of that circumference, humanity will begin to degrade. This has gone on multiple times in the last 250,000 years while humans have been living on this earth. And the cosmology theory of numerals, which Pythagoras learned from the Egyptian hierophants. So even if you don't know who Pythagoras was, maybe you at some point, somebody enlightened you about 3.14, which is pi, which is brought to rectify. Well, what she pulled out of the Akashic record is how far back there was higher intelligence than there is. We are on the end. Very common people understood the principles I'm talking about 2,000 years ago, and now the mass majority of people can't do math without a calculator. And so the cosmological theory of numerals, which Pythagoras learned from the Egyptian hierophants. And so she's also trying to get through into our mind and to build a case for us that we have been lied to our whole life and told that we are the pinnacle of humanity. When in fact the reality is we as a society are the cesspool of humanity. And you only need to go back, and I've been doing this since I was 5 years old. You only need to go back and look at the ancients and ask yourself the simple questions like, how did they pick a 40,000 ton piece of rock up, move it 200 miles, and then set it up when we can barely accomplish that with all of the things that we have materially? That's a big thing you need to grab a hold of. We're talking about two principles: materialism, that's the things that you can see, and we're talking about spiritualism, which is the things you can't see that are more powerful than the things you can see. And so Pythagoras is the one who developed the forum. They have now uncovered that there were ancient societies by thousands of years before Pythagoras that were actually, pi is not correct. That they actually had numbers that rectified what pi is all about prior, by thousands of years, Pythagoras. He was good, and his thing certainly helps us. But there is a method that was used thousands of years before Pythagoras. In fact, that wasn't something that he pulled out of the spirit realm. That was something that was given to him by ancient writings which have long ago been destroyed. And so we are in the middle of a conspiracy that's not a conspiracy, it's a conspiracy fact. It is a conspiracy against humanity and has been going on for thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And so, is alone able to reconcile two units, matter and spirit? And you see this argument is going on in every college that there is. You have half the scientists who say there is no spirit, and you have the other half who are starting to awaken and open their eyes and actually find out that the spirit realm is infinitely more potent than the little bit of stupid stuff that we've come to learn through hundreds of years of closing out the spirit realm. You'll see that as you go along. And so Pythagoras learned from the Egyptian hierophants, is alone able to reconcile the two units, matter and spirit, and cause each to demonstrate the other mathematically. The sacred numbers of the universe and their esoteric in their hidden combination solve the great problem and explain the theory of radiation and the cycle of the emanations. The lower orders, before they develop into higher ones, must emanate from the higher spiritual ones, and when arrived at the turning point, be reabsorbed again into the infinite. And see, that's what I'm saying. That there's a lot there, man. It would take a long time to break that down, and I'm waiting for when Source gives me a gathering of people that we can spend days, not minutes. Physiology, like everything else in this world of constant evolution, is subject to the cyclic revolution. As it is now, seems to be hardly emerging from the shadows of the lower arc. So just so you know, she constantly bumps in and out of the arc process. So it may be one day proved to have been at the highest point of the circumference of the circle far earlier than the days of Pythagoras. What does that mean to you? That means that Pythagoras, who lived thousands of years ago in BC, that he was not even the pinnacle of what went on in humanity. But you've been lied that everything that happened in 5,000 years. So you can see how, can you even, or have you even tried to begin to wrap your mind around the fact that on this earth there were people that were functioning at higher levels, mathematically, mentally, spiritually, powerfully. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of writings of how they healed people with the spirit realm. And Yeshua comes along and he's teaching that. But you know nothing about it. And so if we don't have an awakening, for those of you who may not understand this piece, I feel like it's worthy to explain a little bit to you. We are right now at a crossroads in the earth. Well, many people believe that they know. Some have channeled, and those things I think are valid. I think you should listen to them. But if they be honest with you, even the spirit realm is not sure about what is going to happen to mankind. We are right now, there is a decision, either humanity is going to choose to awaken or humanity is going to be destroyed, guys. That's the bottom line. That's the bottom line. I don't care if you like it and don't like it. I don't care if it makes you mad. I don't care if you hate me because of it. Nobody's saying this truth to people. Right now, the universe is watching humanity. And if we do not enlighten, we will be wiped out. And a new cycle will start all over again. And there's lots of 20,000-year-old prophecies that say those exact same words. Nobody wants to say it because it doesn't make them rich for teaching spirituality. Okay, the whole thing that's going on in the spirit world on the earth is the same thing with Christianity. You need to be an ascended master so you can get lots of people to watch your YouTube page, so you can make lots of money and have lots of conferences and start doing cruises and all of the same crap that Joel Osteen is doing. As long as it's controlled by humans, it's always going to be about how rich can they make themselves. And so it's pretty difficult, because if they tell you that, you'll get mad and you won't buy their next book about how wonderfully blessed you are. And so everything emanates, goes through a cycle, and then is reabsorbed. We also are the same. We sign a contract, we sit around the collective soul, we have conversations. It's not a bit of it is done in ignorance. We are at such a high state. The fake has been so removed when we die that we have conversations, we discuss. Other people that are with us in the collective soul throw out ideas to accomplish whatever it is that I deem I needed to come into this earth to do. And this really gets pretty huge, because when the statement is made that you chose everything that has happened in your life, you made the decision before you were ever put into a human body. Every time you were put into a human body, you made a decision about what you were going to come to this earth and learn. And we can't buy that. That's where you get into the things where people have gone through horrible traumas through their life, and they've been raped and they've been abused and they've been all of this. And it's very difficult because we're not spiritual, we're carnal. So we really think that it's about the human aspect. And in the human aspect is really not important at all in the spirit realm. So we come here as a school to learn how to overcome the pain that somebody killing us brings. How do you overcome that? And if you don't get it, you get to come back in and you'll get the lesson again, which is also goes along with the new understanding of karma. Karma is not repayment to people for bad. Karma is the kindness of the universe. And when you fail, karma makes you go through the test again. And for many people, that may be multiple lifetimes before they finally fix the karma. That's why bringing karma in out of your life is the things you failed on, that you failed to learn what you came into life for, and so you have to go through another life again. And then we see that in an everyday life. Whatever it is, if you're triggered, the whole trigger concept is really a lot more huge. That's why the woke environment uses the trigger mechanism. Is it corrupted in how they're using it? Yes. Is it real? Absolutely. And so we're supposed to learn how to overcome these things. We're supposed to learn how to be creators with the source. And because we've been lied to so much, the mass majority of humans do not know anything about what I just said. And yet, it's for every one of us if we are willing to accept the responsibility. Okay? It really is about, when this is all said and done, friends, the only people whose frequencies are going to raise are the people who were willing, who took it seriously, who had feelings for it, and then started applying it. If you just want to continue to mindlessly live thinking that that's what life is all about, then there's no doubt you'll have many other opportunities to do so. So incarnation is not necessarily going away. The people that stay in low density will just continue the cycle that they've been in, doing the same thing over and over until they finally happen to get it right. And so physiology, like everything else in the world of constant evolution, and that's really been a huge thing. I used to be adamantly against evolution as it was sold to us, and she gets into some of that when Freud was still alive, and the whole concept of evolution. What it is actually now quite apparent is that everything is about us evolving. If we are staying in the same place, we are low density. You see how the two now go together. Now evolution is part of a process. Just like someone who chose in the other life to come in, and part of what they accepted responsibility is that they were going to be abused, beaten, raped by somebody that they loved very much. That person made a decision at full consciousness to do that. But they have no knowledge of it when they come in as a human, so it seems like a tragedy. And that takes really a special person to come up to this place where I'm speaking from already, which is very low, I promise you. The truth that exists is absolutely mind-boggling. You have to hear it and understand it spiritually. Everybody can, Everybody has free reign. In fact, it's starting to become very clear that in actuality, friend, all of the lies that are being told about people in higher consciousness, that really also is another corruption. So stop, and I don't know what the Creator will get me off on tonight, so wherever I go is where I'm supposed to go for tonight. But here's something that I would like you to understand. If you can, in your mind, grab a hold of the reality that you are divine. Okay? You've always been divine. There's not a time when you've ever been not divine. Well, that causes a real huge problem with people whose minds are locked in and still functioning under the paradigms that Christianity programmed you to. They told you that you were a sinner the day that you were born, and it was up to you to gain back rightness. And that is exactly the opposite of the truth. You were born with the ability to be fully conscious, even as you are outside of the human realm. The problem is they made you forget that before you came into a life, because if you remembered all that you really are, it would really be quite boring down here. And so from being in the other version of being fully consciousness, fully spirit, you come in, it's not about excitement, it's about, I need this little bitty piece for me to evolve further. And so you go into Earth, you live a mere little 80 years or whatever it is, and you hopefully you learned the lesson and you leave again, and maybe you go to a different planet next time. Reincarnation doesn't happen on a pattern. There are really actually a lot more choices that we have, and we'll look at some of that as things go along. But physiology, like everything else in the world of constant evolution, is subject to the cyclical revolution, as it now seems to be hardly emerging from the shadows of the laurel arch, so it may be one day proved to have been at the highest point of the circumference of the circle far earlier than the days of Pythagoras. So you could actually take that and go, well, Pythagoras was one of the most brilliant minds that have existed in our time frame, and yet he learned that from someone who actually was more brilliant than him in times before he came. And so that's pretty powerful, because it really defies all that we've been programmed to believe, which is all of those people were dumb barbarians. None of them knew anything. People walked around and all they could use is rocks. And, but nobody can answer, well, then where did fire come from? Where did medicine that existed before us, where there were people healed for things that people are dying of now, and yet medicine can't deal with it? There's lots of written records of what I'm talking about. It just takes so much time. And so Mochus the Sidonian, the physiologist and teacher of the science of anatomy, flourished long before the sage of Samos, and the latter received the sacred instruction from his disciples and descendants. Pythagoras, the pure philosopher, the deeply versed in the profounder phenomena of nature, the noble inheritor of ancient lore, whose great aim was to free the soul from the fetters of sense and force, and force it to realize, this is so beautiful, its powers. So here's a piece that is so wonderful and lovely. It's difficult, but it's wonderful and lovely. Pythagoras was doing exactly what I'm sitting here tonight doing. He had spiritually a revelation and understanding, just as those who gave him, if you would, the wisdom and the knowledge to have that understanding that we are not what we've been told. So actually, most of the seers, I guess really all of the seers, that have existed in history were all trying to help people understand that you're not a human, you're a spirit. And until you accept responsibility for that, you will continue to trudge through the denseness. The people that will ascend into the new earth that's functioning now are people who were able of making the switch from I'm a human having a spiritual journey. I've heard thousands of so-called enlightened people that tell people that and think they're comforting them, and it's not the truth. We are all eternal spirit beings that are having an earthly experience, and we have many of them. And so Pythagoras, the pure philosopher, the deeply versed in the profounder phenomena of nature, the noble inheritor of the ancient lore, whose great aim was to free the soul from the fetters of sense and force it to realize its power, must live eternally in human memory. It's beautiful. It's everywhere. The impenetrable veil of arcane secrecy was thrown over the sciences taught in the sanctuary. This is the cause of the modern depreciating of the ancient philosophies. That's why you had probably never heard of the Kabbalion until I, following sources prompting and my intuition, brought that and put it in front of you. And most of you may not still have the revelation of how profound what I put in front of you is, because you don't even understand what it means. You don't understand that when the universe looks at you, the reality that you see through your eyes is a mirror image of what you are. I've been telling people you need to quit lying to yourself. Now I'm finding that principle everywhere. By all the leaders for thousands of years told people the same thing. Until you start being honest that you created this mirror image world, and because Source allows you to see it, he does that out of kindness so that you can recognize that that's yourself, embrace the shadow, and change it. In a nutshell. The impenetrable veil of arcane secrecy was thrown over the sciences taught in the sanctuary. That's true. They hid all of this from us. This is the cause of the modern depreciating of the ancient philosophies. Even Plato and Philo-Judaeus have been accused by many a commentator of absurd inconsistencies. Whereas the design which underlies the maze of metaphysical contradictions so perplexing to the reader of the Timaeus is but too evident. But has Plato ever been read understandingly by one of the expounders of the classics? This is a question warranted by the criticisms to be found in such authors as Stahlbaum, Schleiermacher, Ficinus, Heindorf, Sydenham, Buttman, Taylor, and Burgess. These were all modern scientific teachers who were telling people that everything is matter and there is no spirit. They were prominent in her day. She was railing, she was fighting a war for the soul of man, and to a large extent, other than her and the theosophy that she created, she was attacked constantly. Because they don't want you, they don't see it. So they read Plato, and they read Plato from a human perspective instead of reading Plato from a spirit perspective. And I've sat with doctors, I've had doctors in my gun shop that I talk to that absolutely unequivocally do not even believe that there is a God. They don't believe in the spirit realm. Everything is just taken at face value that this is what it is. And that's not all that uncommon. If you really sit down and talk to people, you will find out that the mass majority of people really do believe that they're a human. And they only focus on human things. I want, mine, on and on. All of those things that are human. There's no collective to any of it. They only worry about their self, and they only worry about you when they can gain something from you. And so she's asking the question, well, you talk against Plato. All of these world-renowned scholars talk against Plato, and yet all of you don't believe what he said. Have you ever read it with maybe the simple concept that it's true? What about Yeshua? You don't think that the Jews hated him? He was teaching the same thing she's talking about. Don't you know that you are Elohim? Don't you know that you are a mighty one? I learned today that in the past, humans were what gods were prior to Christianity. And so, but has Plato ever been read understandingly by one of the expounders of the classics? This is a question warranted by the criticisms to be found in such authors as Stahlbaum, Schleiermacher, Ficinus, Heindorf, Sydenham, Buttman, Taylor, and Burgess, to say nothing of lesser authorities. The covert allusions of the Greek philosopher to esoteric, hidden things have manifestly baffled these commentators to the last degree. They not only with unblushing coolness suggest as to certain difficult passages that another phraseology was evidently intended, but they audaciously make the changes. The Orphic line of the song, the order of the sixth race, close, which can only be interpreted as a reference to the sixth race evolving in consecutive evolution of the spheres, Burgess says was evidently taken from a cosmology where man was feigned to be created the last. Ought not one who undertakes to edit another's work at least understand what the author means? Indeed, the ancient philosophers seem to be generally held, even by the least prejudiced of our modern critics, to have lacked the profundity and thorough knowledge in the exact sciences of which our century is so boastful. It is even questioned whether they understood that basic scientific principle, ex nihilo nihil fit, if they subjected the indestructible of matter at all. Say these commentators, it was not in consequence of a firmly established formula, but only through an intuitional reasoning and by an analogy. We hold to the contrary opinion. The speculations of these philosophers upon matter were open to public criticism, but their teachings in regard to spiritual matter were profoundly hidden. Okay? It's not surprising that more people in this world in which we live in aren't aware. I used to see this a lot in Christianity, and I guess I've been blessed in ways I haven't even really realized how huge they were. My grandfather healed people. He prayed for them. He believed God wanted people to be healed, and people were healed. I have prayed for people and seen people healed. I know no one else personally who can say that. None. And I've been in Christianity my whole life. You got to ask yourself why. When Yeshua said that whatever you believe, when you ask for it, and that, if you want to know the truth, friends, that is the core secret reality. You can play all the games and you can waste all the words that you want to waste, and you ain't ever going to see nothing. There are some very specific things that Yeshua was teaching which have been hidden because of Christianity, but they were so deep and they were so esoteric, such as billions of people have never even so much as seen a healing. And we were intended to be doing that constantly. And so if you're one of those, I don't say those words to condemn you. I say those words to tell you that the deception that she talks about, that I talk about, that others talk about, that deception is infinitely larger than we will ever be able to verbalize. It's not if, it's a fact that you have the power, the availability to the power to be able to do supernatural healings. Yeshua told us in another place, he said that these signs will follow those that go to church. Y'all remember that verse, don't you? Read right there. These signs will follow those that go to church. They will lay their hands on the sick and they will recover. Y'all remember that one? Oh, you don't remember that one because it doesn't exist. But he did tell us what the truth was. And the belief has to happen before, not after. And some of you, that will rip your mind to shreds. You will go off into chaos trying to deal with that reality. What does it even mean that I have to believe something that I can't even see? It's also the only source to the magic of the supernatural realm, which isn't so supernatural now that I understand where we're at. And so, the covert allusions of the Greek philosopher to esoteric things have have manifestly baffled those commentators to the last degree. They not only with unblushing coolness suggest as to certain difficult passages that another phraseology was evidently intended, and I've heard this a lot. And that's how the Bible got twisted, because they couldn't understand the metaphysical aspects, and so they could only answer it from a human perspective, and that couldn't have been what they meant. You know, like the Bible telling us that there were people that came and flew to this earth and took people up into the heavenlies and created and did manifestations and on and on and on. One of the greatest of the magicians was Samuel the prophet. How do we know that? He pulled spirits from the other side, pulled them through the veil, and exposed them to humanity. And you were told that he said that was a horrible thing for you to do. I always ask that question. Well, why in the heck did Samuel do it then? Same way with Yeshua. Don't talk to demons. And every demon he ever cast out, he talked to them. We got some problems going on in our belief systems, friend. And so we don't, a lot of these things, we don't even know what the argument was about. At least the people in the ancient time who were humanists, who were materialists, they believed that this is the real world. They at least understood all the different pawns that were sitting on the chessboard. We're so lost, we don't even know what the pawns are. You look at a chessboard and in the physical realm, it means a game. And it is a game, but in the spirit realm, it is reality. And so, shouldn't we understand what Yeshua meant when he said these signs will follow those that believe before we go making a decision about what it is? And of course, if you were brought up in Christianity, you never tried to make that decision in the first place. You just heard the words and you never saw it, so you had no reason to expect it. And so it is even questioned whether they understood that basic scientific principles. And that is for them, and it is going on in our time. Now, that is shifting. So even you that weren't blessed to go to school, and your school made you learn about Plato, or you learned about Pythagoras, you know. And that's in many. And unfortunately, those that are in school today are worse off than when I was in school. I mean, we've gone from an 8th to a 3rd grade education just since I got out of school. And now a senior can test out. We know that because we tested some homeschool kids, and children that were in the 9th grade didn't have but a 3rd grade education. The numbers are absolutely true. And so it was not in consequence of the firmly established formula, but only through an initial reasoning and by analogy. We hold to the contrary opinion. The speculation of these philosophers upon matter were open to public criticism, but their teachings in regard to spiritual things were profoundly esoteric. Esoteric simply means hidden. Why is it esoteric? It is hidden because they can't trust you with it. You don't know anything about it, and it would take 1,000 years to teach you all that's being said just in this book. And they don't have any interest to waste their time on you. So they just don't say anything, and you don't know anything, and everybody continues in ignorance. And it's only those who do make that jump, that decision on their own. Those that begin to go seek for. There is more here. Maybe some of you that will come along inside of you. You don't even know what you're looking for. You don't even know how you're going to find it. But something in you keeps gnawing at you and telling you that there is more to life than what you're aware of. And if you're one of those, you are absolutely on the right trail. And if you don't have that, then I don't even know what that means. I know the scriptures I can give to you about only those who seek. So all the people that are just casually waiting around for somebody else to do all the thousands of hours of study so that they can come and tell you for free what the truth is, it doesn't matter that you heard it. It's not ever going to benefit you because you don't know anything about it. And so, but their teachings in regard to spiritual things were profoundly esoteric, being thus sworn to secrecy and religious silence about abstruse subjects involving the relations of spirit and matter. They rivaled each other in their ingenious methods for concealing their real opinions. Because, well, there was a time in history when if you told the truth about the mystic, they had already killed all the other mystics. They killed all the Gnostics. The thing that went on in Jerusalem with Yeshua had not a dang thing to do with Christianity. They were killing the Gnostics. They were killing the ones that knew the secret stuff, friends. You're going to find out before we get out of this book that the Essenes were the last group of mystics before Yeshua and his group of Gnostics. So they learned a lot of their wisdom from those guys that were over there that knew about doing supernatural things, was supposed to be part of your life. If you've been with me, you heard the picture and the perspective and how the Essenes lived in Dolores's book. It's absolutely true. They were not Christians. They were mystical people that understood the spirit realm, and you can do anything with your mind if you know how to do what's supposed to be done. Healing is a thought away, friends, and yet we're totally oblivious to it. And so the doctrine of metempsychosis has been abundantly ridiculed by men of science and rejected by theologians. So the science says it ain't real, and the church says it ain't real. Church says spiritual is real, but it ain't real for you. So it was both, not one or the other. That's why magic and power and spiritual, that's why you have a fear. Me and Marianne went through a thing where we started, and it was by the Spirit that is inside of us to follow Solomon's teachings, and we got into them, and they got so deep that both of us got scared, and we quit pursuing the truth because of our human fear. If you are in fear, you are low density, and you will be here for a much longer time. I promise you. That's what your lot is. And so if it had been properly understood in its application, which is, I hope, what I'm going to help do some, to the indestructibility of matter and the immortality of spirit, okay? It has been known for 250 million years, dear one, that we are spirit beings that live forever. Humanity has worked with some malevolent spirit forces, I don't say who, outside of this physical realm that have been orchestrating this thing. They're like a George Soros with the Antifa. They sit up in a room and you never see them, and because you never see them and the news doesn't talk about the destruction that George Soros has done to the United States of America, because it's a rule that you don't say his name in public if you're in a place of power. It's funny, Donald Trump just the other day made a statement that he's looking and he's coming for Soros and the whole bill that is running. It is a secret cabal, friends. And there is a higher secret cabal that does the same thing, only on a global realm. Just so that you know. And so, if it had been properly understood in its application to the indestructibility of matter and the immortality of spirit, it would have been perceived that it is a sublime conception. Should we not first regard the subject from the standpoint of the ancients before venturing to disparage its teachers? And the answer is if you're a Christian, unequivocally no, you shouldn't. If it's not what the church says is the truth, then you write it off. It's demon, it's witchcraft. You can't imagine, as being a pastor, how much of this stuff I had to live around constantly. And so, the solution of the great problem of eternity belongs neither to religious superstition nor to gross materialism. The harmony and mathematical equiformity of the double evolution, spiritual and physical. And just so you know, if you've ever watched anything that Dolores says, she constantly talks about us evolving. She's not talking about human evolvement. She's talking about spiritual evolvement. And so if you're all spirit, you must evolve, you must change and come into the reality of what that actually even means. And she constantly talked about it. And so the harmony and mathematical equiformity of the double evolution, spiritual and physical, are elucidated only in the universal numerals of Pythagoras, who built his system entirely upon the so-called metrical speech of the Hindu Vedas. So you'll find out that she lays out antiquity and really all of the stuff that I taught you guys with the Upanishad and reading the affirmations. Those things are more ancient than anything that we know of. It is but lately that one of the most zealous Sanskrit scholars, Martin Hogg, undertook the translation of the Aitareya Brahmana of the Rig Veda. It had been till that time entirely unknown. These explanations indicate beyond dispute the identity of the Pythagorean and the Brahmanical systems. In both, the esoteric significance is derived from the number. In the former, from the mystic relation of every number to everything, intelligible to the human mind. That's why numerology is so big. I've gone as far as to be told when I was in Christianity and younger that numerology was demon worship. And it's how the universe was created, friends. And so, in both, the esoteric significance is derived from the number, in the former from the mystic relation of every number to everything intelligible to the human mind, and the latter from the number of syllables of which each verse in the mantras consists. Plato, the ardent disciple of Pythagoras, realized it so fully as to maintain that the dodecahedron was the geometrical figure employed by the demiurgus, which are the ones that created. The demiurge, this has the us on it, which is plural. In constructing the universe, some of these figures had a particularly solemn significance. For instance, 4, of which the dodecahedron is the trine, was held sacred by the Pythagoreans. It is the perfect square, and neither of the bounding lines exceed the other in length by a single point. It is the emblem of moral justice and divine equity geometrically expressed. Now, for those of you who know anything about Jews that follow Kabbalah, they are all about numbers. In fact, everything is numbers to them. We are way below them in intelligence level. There's a reason why they call the secret societies demon worshiping, because they actually possess some of these truths and teach their initiates those things. So for all of those people like myself that badmouth the Masons, sorry, dude, they know what you will never know. That's the purpose. Make them bad so that people don't learn. It's all BS. And so it is the emblem of moral justice and divine equity, geometrically expressed. All the powers and great symphonies of physical and spiritual nature lie inscribed within the perfect square and the ineffable name of him. Have you ever wondered why his name is named down to 4? I'm really learning a lot of things now that are corroborating things that are in the Bible, and we were given one definition of them, but it's not the real truth. That was what Christianity told you that meant. Why was the 4 letters of the name of the Hebrew God so important, and what was it? How many of them were there? There were 4. And so was replaced by this sacred number 4, the most binding and solemn oath with the ancient mystics, the tetracytes. If the Pythagorean metempsychosis should be thoroughly explained and compared with the modern theory of evolution, it would be found to supply every missing link in the chain of the ladder. But who of our scientists would consent to lose his precious time over the vagaries of the ancients? Notwithstanding proofs to the contrary, they not only deny that the nations of the archaic periods, but even that the ancient philosophers had any positive knowledge of the heliocentric system. The venerable Betas and the Augustines and Lactani appear to have smothered with their dogmatic ignorance all faith in the more ancient theologists of the pre-Christian centuries. But now philology, that ain't it, and a closer acquaintance with Sanskrit literature has partially enabled us to vindicate them for these unmerited imputations. In the Vedas, for instance, we find positive proof that so long ago as 2000 BC, the Hindu sages and scholars must have been acquainted with the rotundity of our globe in the heliocentric system. Hence, Pythagoras and Plato knew well in their astronomical truth, for Pythagoras obtained his knowledge in India or from men who had been there, and Plato faithfully echoed Pythagoras' teachings. We will quote 2 passages from the Aitareya Brahmana. In the serpent mantra, the Brahmana declares as follows, that the mantra is that one which was seen by the queen of the serpents, Sarpa Rajni, because of the earth, Ayam, is the queen of the serpents, as she is the mother and queen of all that moves, or Sarpat. In the beginning, she, the earth, was but one head, round, without hair, bald, without vegetation. So she uses the concept. What is she trying to prove here? You probably have been around a bunch of fanatics that think they know everything that exists and are telling you and have told you and have made millions of dollars off of people who are unstable about that the earth is flat. Well, I didn't get to live 5,000 years ago and know that, but it's easy for me. I never did buy into that crap they were selling so they could make themselves rich. See, all you have to do is come up with a story and sell it to people to obtain wealth. Truth is a little different story. And so these people, 2000 BC, friends, that's 600 years before Moses lived, they knew the earth was round. So the book of Enoch is not the truth. The earth isn't flat. And it's never been flat since its very beginning. And so, if y'all think about it, you saw the serpent the other day that ran and turned itself into a tree, and all of that I read with you in the Gnostic text, either this Saturday or the one before it. You notice that that concept was a serpent, and that's where the serpent got cursed. Now, Helena Blavatsky, that died 100 years ago, that prophesied of things 5,000 years ago, is now speaking to humans today and telling you, are you really that ignorant? Do you really know so little about what is going on this earth that you don't even know that the earth is round, and they knew that 5,000 years ago? That's what it's about. Because the earth, I am, is the queen of the serpents, as she is the mother and queen of all that moves, Sarpat. In the beginning, she, the earth, was but one head, round, without hair, or bald, in other words, without vegetation. Dig this. She then perceived this mantra which confers upon him who knows it the power of assuming any form he might desire. She pronounced the mantra, in other words, sacrificed to the gods, and in consequence immediately obtained a motley appearance. She became variegated and able to produce any form that she might like, changing one form into another. This mantra begins with the words, and I really have every intention. I will begin to search out these mantras and these things. There is all kinds of stuff that has been hidden from me as a Christian that is real and powerful and amazing and beautiful. And we were told it's all demon worship. Changing one form into another, it begins with the word Ayam Gua Prishnir Akramit. The description of the earth in the shape of a round and a bald head, which was soft at first and became hard only from being breathed upon by the god Vayu, the Lord of the air, forcibly suggests the idea that the authors of the sacred Vedic books 7,000 years ago knew the earth to be round or spherical. Moreover, that it had been a gelatinous mass at first, which gradually cooled off under the influence of the air and time. So this ancient god Vidu that breathed on the earth is nothing, it's nothing but the air. And what did it do? It cooled this earth down. We're still scalding hot in the middle, friends. But it cooled the outside down, and the outside hardened, and vegetation grew. And that's how the earth was created, really. And so much for their knowledge about our globe's sphericity. And now we will present the testimony upon which we base our assertion that the Hindus were perfectly acquainted with the heliocentric system at least 2,000 years BC, or 700 years before Moses was taught these mystical teachings in Egypt. That's why Egypt, by the Bible, had to be the horrible place. It had to be the demon, because what the fight was is to cause you to forget who you were and to continue to keep you blind so they could harvest you like a bunch of slaves, and it's worked for 7,000 years. And you're still a slave. Having power at this point that's unknown. And yet we work and toil and believe that we are cursed from the day we're born. Wow. Can I say to you, they've been pretty dang successful. They've been pretty dang successful about keeping humans caught in the lie that we are cursed. You see, all of the pieces and all the perceptions in every writing that we have read, you see the writings of the Bible, and they're always more ancient than they were, than the Bible is. So I would tell you on one level, if you want to know what the truth is, as I have shown you by my behavior, that we must go further away from Christianity to find where did this truth start. And in many cases, most of the documentation for us in this time has been lost. But I will tell you that I'm not real sure that the source of all, the one that we are a divine spark of, say this to yourself: I am divine. You know what? The minute that you begin to believe that, I would say probably 30% of your work is done. Because the first thing you have to do is believe that you're supernatural and that you're spiritual, not that you're physical. And so I know, because I've been using this, I've been using it on people and putting it in front of people, and the mass majority of people have never conceived the fact that even that fact is a lie. Because all we can see is what we taste, touch, and feel. Remember, they taught you that. They taught me that in elementary school. Reality is what you can see, taste, touch, and feel. And as long as you buy that and stay in that paradigm, you're doomed. And that's where most people are if the truth were known. Now, the good news is that there's a thing called the collective soul. And the collective soul exists on the other side and actually is instrumental in helping people come in again. It is wisdom. It's what religion or theology should have been, only in the proper manner, because it's all about helping you to grow. See, here's the thing that I'm learning. We're struggling with us evolving from a human to a spirit, and as long as we stay in that, you'll never go anywhere. And it's only when you begin to open your eyes and to recognize that either you are immortal or you're not. And to be quite honest with you, if you're not, life is a waste of time. Because all you're going to do is suffer, be abused, hated, and die. I mean, you know, it's quite revolutionary when you begin to get some of these truths. They begin to get into your spirit. Well, what if I really am divine? What if I always have been and I always will be, because I am God? See, and you think that I'm exalting myself and saying somehow that I'm God. We are all God. That's exactly what Yeshua said. It was 100% truth. Where did he get that knowledge? He got that knowledge from the ancients that lived a long time before Moses did. In fact, Moses learned what they knew. That's where his knowledge came from, in the temples of Egypt. He was one of the most intelligent people in Egypt, guys. He wasn't some little dumb guy over here who couldn't talk. He was in everything that had power. He knew every spell. He knew every incantation. He could speak to the wind and speak to the water. And he could do all of those things every day. He was trained in this stuff that is being exposed to you. Moses was. And all they had to do was not tell you that, and you never learned what he really was. Or Samuel the prophet, who was my favorite Bible person. I always thought it was so cool that he could run over to that place and come back from the other realm. That's the same stuff you're seeing in near-death experiences and stuff like that. So there's still the same war is raging. They just continue to dumb people down so you ask less questions. You don't care anymore. Who cares? I'm going to live. One day I went through, seems like the universe brought 10 or 12 people into my life, and every one of them said the same thing. I knew it was a pattern, that it came from the universe, and they all said the same thing. Well, you know, you only get one life. You're going to live, suffer, and die. And it was quite aggravating to me. It did not resonate with me. They did not, because that's not the truth. And now that I know the truth, going back to the lie isn't quite so easy. For many of you, you will also find that out. So if you don't remember anything else tomorrow, I hope that you will remember this, because if you do, it's the beginning of a road that will be a huge blessing to you. You are already divine. In fact, you're actually, if God is in you and you are in God, and everything tells us that that's the truth, if that's the truth, then how could you be anything but divine? In fact, there's never been a time in your life, no matter how bad whatever you've done, that you were not connected to Source. That's a pretty profound statement. But it is the truth. And so guess how might we interrelate? How might meditation not be such a pain? And there's many things that are coming out about that as well, about what is meditation. And I think there's some massive pieces that might quite shock some of you who are struggling with meditation. We do need to do it, and we need to do it so that we can interface with ourself. And so we all of these things are going on all around us in the Mexican area, South America. They do ayahuasca. Ayahuasca puts you in a chemical-induced meditation. The people now, the newest thing that they're doing for people who have had mass trauma, they are giving them, what is that stuff? MDT? It's I guess something kind of similar to LSD. And that's what the whole movement was done by the government in the 60s with LSD. You understand, the CIA and the government created LSD. They used it. Because if you can put your mind in a trance, here's the thing, and I'm learning a lot of things about the universe and about us. The universe doesn't care whether it's real or whether it's just your imagination. In fact, many learned masters will tell you that your imagination is how God speaks through you. Think about that one for a bit. So everything is getting turned upside down, but it's not getting turned upside down. It's actually being returned to right side up. Certainly there's been many things said about our pole, and the pole is shifting. It's still anticipated, friends, no matter what spirituality says, it's still anticipated that somewhere in the very near future, the poles are going to flip again, and everything's going upside down, topsy-turvy, and there will be trees on Antarctica again, and on and on and on. That was spoken by Edgar Cayce, was one of them. The most notable prophet that's lived in the last 100 years. Told us that was coming for humanity. It's going to cause massive chaos. I think that probably some of the things that we might get to see in our lifetime, when they happen, you'll look backwards and you'll go, wow, Source was telling me all of these things that are being shown to me so I would be able to deal with what's coming. He doesn't want to destroy us, but he has to do what he does. He will have things like the universe desires them. And unfortunately, we're such a motivating factor in that. So when you look at yourself in the morning, that gives a whole new concept. I shared with y'all the mirror picture. I actually, to be quite honest with you, friends, I had zero understanding that was actually a teaching about the universe and yourself. When you do that, you are mirroring what you are already doing in reality. And that's the shadow. That's why people don't want to look at themselves in the mirror and be honest with themselves, because they don't really want to see. That's why it's so difficult for people to look at their life and go, well, I created all of this. I had this bad decision and I had that bad decision and I did this and I didn't believe this, and all of those things are why my life is what it is. Now, if you're in the process of change, not to worry, because it won't stay that way. That's something I can tell you I have every confidence in. That when you begin to enlighten, the universe begins to change everything in your situation. And it might not all happen at once, but he will. You will find people that will disappear from your lifetime forever, and you will meet new people that are equal to the frequency that you're in. And that's part of the twin earth thing that's going on, where people are elevating and the frequencies are changing. And you can watch it right in front of you every single day if you'll pay attention. So I hope you guys will grab a hold of some of this. I know it's deep. I know it's metaphysical. You have no clue how much I struggle with myself, because I really want to go get a little dollar book that I can read some story to you and tell you this is what the truth is. But that's not the truth, and I'm not a liar. So I can't really afford to do that. Sorry for those that might wish that better. But as we go along, she will bring in more and more pieces as you get through this initial stuff. She's really trying to get through to each of us that there are humans. Here's another piece that some of you may not know, because I was going to say something and you might not have any understanding about it. Almost every channeler that has ever channeled, and I'm talking Nostradamus, I'm talking Casey, I'm talking Helena, Blavatsky, all of them tell us of a class of humanoids that walk on this earth even this very day. Maybe some of you that will stop by here are those people as well. And none of this will ever reach you, because you don't have a spirit soul. So there are humans on this earth that are not eternal. At some levels, it almost makes me think, is that where they got the whole concept of a zombie? And that's just a metaphoric picture. The zombie is a metaphoric picture for a soulless person? Highly possible. If you want to know the truth, it's existed a lot longer than zombies have. And so, as the world changes, and as truth and the ability to receive truth comes out, I hope that it's really going to take an open mind to be able to deal with some things like, you're not human, you're spirit. That's like a big step. If you can make that one and come to peace with it, you did something. I'd say amen to you. But I've started applying that little by little, albeit it's not, a lot of this stuff isn't fast at all. But if you have it in your mind and you put it in and it's important to you, the universe will help you come to terms with it. And so, peace to each and every one of you. I hope you've been blessed. Again, the book is Isis Unveiled, Volume 1 and 2. Certainly, I encourage you guys, to read it other than the time. I'm just here to bring out some points and expound on some things and to put it in front of you. I really can't read it and help you understand it. You're not ever going to get enough in an hour's message. I have 1,000 things I'd like to say right now that I'll never get to say. And next week, I may not be at the same place. And so you missed all of that. And that's the sad thing. As we recognize that we're spirit, we're going to recognize that we need each other more and more. So for those of you that think the way is to go off on your own and do nothing, the purpose of us coming to the consciousness of who we are is so that we can truly learn what life's lesson is, which is how to love people. That's the whole thing. So all of those that we met that said that it's all about love, I would like to concur with you totally and completely. It is all about love. But what that means, my definition and yours is slightly different. And so I hope you guys will be at peace. I hope you'll take some of this. There's no reason to be fearful. You're already that. My God, how could you get fearful? All you got to do is find inside of you the truth and you'll know, because you already possess it. All I'm doing is telling you this is what you should be remembering. That's all this is a remembering of what we already are. And so I hope you'll grab a hold of it. Blessings to each and every one of you. Namaste.